Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Dovetails event for Yemen. The war in Yemen has caused the greatest humanitarian disaster in the world. 24 million people need our help. That's 80% of the population. To put that in perspective, that's 4 times the population of Scotland. Their coronavirus cases have passed 1 million, and 10 million people are in danger of starvation. I don't know if people saw the news last week, but pictures of starving children should just not happen in our world. And what makes it so appalling is that in Scotland, we are making the weapons that are causing this devastation. The Scottish Government even gave arms manufacturers millions of pounds, nearly £1 million, for diversity training. With the profits they make, they can afford to fund their own training. One of the groups which has been fighting against the manufacture of arms, and in particular the selling of them to Saudi Arabia, is the Campaign Against the Arms Trade. And I spoke to Emma Cockburn of CAAT earlier this week. CAAT has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, which is remarkable for a small group of peace campaigners in this country, along with their partners, Mwatana for Human Rights, who are a campaigning group in Yemen itself. So I'm going to play you the recording of the interview with Emma. I'd like to welcome Emma Cockburn to our meeting. Emma is the Scotland coordinator for the Campaign Against the Arms Trade. I'd just like to congratulate you, Emma, on the Nobel Peace Prize nomination that CAAT was awarded recently. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, I think I don't think the nomination should be centred towards any one person, because obviously our campaign couldn't do any of our work without the support of all our supporters. Everyone that's ever signed an MP letter or stood out in the rain with a leaflet, like it belongs to everybody. It's not just on the people that are behind the scenes kind of working in the office. I think the nomination in general was a big surprise. It had come this year just after the UK had made their commitment clear to continue arming the Saudi-led coalition. This was just after the US had pledged to take steps away, and Italy had recently done the same. In terms of the nomination itself, we were nominated along Mwatana for Human Rights. They are a grassroots organisation working in Yemen, who I'm sure I'll speak a little bit about later on. And it was the American Friends Service Committee and Quaker Peace and Social Witness in the United States who nominated us for our work around trying to stop the UK's arms sales to Saudi Arabia, and particularly around our ongoing court case to challenge Westminster's decision to resume those billions of pounds worth of equipment and weapons that have been used on Yemeni civilians for the last 6 years now.
Yeah. Didn't you win that court case in 2019?
So the history of the court case is an interesting one. So as I mentioned, since 2015, the Saudi-led coalition have been bombarding Yemen constantly. I can't remember off the top of my head the exact figure, but work from Mwatana and other organisations in Yemen have said that it's something along the lines of 3 attacks per day. So that includes on schools, hospitals, weddings, funerals even. There's been some really horrendous attacks there. And the UK's weapons that are made here in Scotland, in Glenrothes in Edinburgh, they have played a central role in that. So we launched this is the word I always get tripped up on, judicial review in 2016. It was way before my time at CAAT, but over 3 years later, the Court of Appeal ruled in our favour. They agreed that the arms sales and the violations of international humanitarian law, I think the wording was irrational and therefore unlawful. and their Secretary of State for International Trade was no longer allowed to grant licenses for the export of arms to Saudi Arabia to be used in Yemen without a detailed assessment as to whether violations of international humanitarian law is taking place. So obviously that was brilliant. It was a landmark decision by the Court of Appeal, and the government was ordered to retake all decisions to export arms to Saudi Arabia. So no new licenses could be granted in that time. And although there were licenses that had been granted previously, and they were still allowed to happen, it was still hundreds of millions of pounds worth of arms that were stopped thanks to that court case. But as you may have seen, in July last year, 2020, Liz Truss, the Secretary of State for International Trade, issued just a written statement to Parliament stating that they'd completed their review and said that any violations of international law were isolated incidents, and that is despite dozens of reports clearly showing that that wasn't the case. We always say that the conclusion wasn't compatible with the evidence, and it's just ridiculous that the government concluded that these licenses were compatible with their own criteria. So yes. From that was the first leg of it, shall we say, and then in October last year we filed a new judicial review application challenging that decision. So obviously that's ongoing, so I can't talk too much about that, but our work around that is a big part of our nomination, because as I said, we wouldn't be able to do that work without the details and the evidence and everything that Watana for Human Rights had collected. So it's the two sides of trying to stop this conflict that's been going on for 6 years now.
And how did you get involved with Watana? Can you tell us a wee bit more about them?
Yeah, definitely. So I obviously relatively new organisation to me, but we've been working hand in hand with them, supporting their work on the ground for a very long time now. They started up, I believe, in 2007, and what they do is they advocate for human rights across Yemen. They do this by monitoring and documenting incidents of violations to human rights on the field. It's incredibly dangerous but incredibly vital work. They take testimonies of witnesses, and as I said, we wouldn't have won that first court case without their research. They have dozens of really heartbreaking, but as I said, important research and reports on their website, and I urge everyone to have a little look and read through to see the exact damage that our government is supporting and are aiding, the lives that are being ruined for a profit margin. If it wasn't for their advocacy and their research, I don't think that anyone outside of Yemen would really know the horrors that are being faced by people in Yemen. So yeah, it's truly an honour for us to be nominated alongside them.
Well, it's an amazing honour, I think. I mean, when you think of the sort of very high profile people who get nominated generally, it's wonderful, and I think everybody, in the peace community in Scotland is just overjoyed for you. It's marvelous. So, do you think that the court case? Do you have a time scale for this court case to continue to when the next leg of it is?
So there's, and I'm not going to claim to be a lawyer or understand, it's not an area of our work that I work on closely, but it is a case of waiting for judges to rule whether or not it can be taken forward, and there's about 6 or 7 different legs. So I think, as I said, it took about 3 years from the beginning of the last one to the kind of Court of Appeals, and there's different courts and different spaces that come into it, and so it's unknown, because it could be relatively quickly. We could be seeing clear movement by the end of this year, or it could again be another couple of years. It is very much just a waiting game for us, and obviously our lawyers speaking with the government and moving things forward and things like that. But as I said, kind of using the court case, it obviously highlighting the Nobel Peace Prize nomination, highlighting the court case, means that we're reaching audiences that weren't familiar with that work ever before, and obviously most importantly highlighting the plight of the people of Yemen and everything that's going on. We're already seeing, as I'd mentioned, the US saying that they're going to be taking steps back, and it's kind of this domino effect. It's with the UK continuing to arm Saudi Arabia and the coalition partners. It is another example of the agenda of the UK isolating itself from its allies, from the international community, and not actually being on the right side of this.
Yeah,
so.
Yes, it does actually seem a kind of logical impossibility to be an arms manufacturer and your goods not be used in a way that damages people. It seems a very curious idea that there's even a law that is being broken here, a humanitarian law, if you know what I mean. They should just ban arms sales altogether.
Yeah, and I think it's that kind of now decades old problem of how intertwined, you know, the arms industry in general and the billions in profit. I think in the next couple of days we should be seeing the end of the arms export figures for 2020. So what we'll be able to do is we will then be able to compare that with the first half of 2020, where obviously those sales weren't new sales weren't allowed to go through, and then the second half, and be able to compare that, because while the arms sales were stopped from I think it was July 2020 back to middle of 2019, there was a backlog. Like the licenses were still applied for, they just couldn't be granted because that assessment hadn't taken place. So already we've seen in the Q3 of last year, those figures being released a couple of months ago, we're seeing a massive jump because it was these backlogged licenses that were just granted. And again, we've got the BAE Systems, who are the kind of the puppet master, shall we say, in the UK's profiting. They have their AGM in May, on the 6th of May this year, so obviously our election day. And what we'll see then is kind of reports of just how much it is that they've profited from this war, but also a look at any impact that our work has had on them, and their ability to profit from this death and destruction.
Well, it's marvellous work you do. Thank you very much, Emma, and good luck with the Nobel Prize. Our first speaker is Chris Nicholl. She was born in the northeast of England, but moved to Scotland in 2003 and lives down in the Wigtown area in a converted stables, which sounds very romantic. She's the author of the poetry pamphlet, The Language of Crows, and her first novel, In Desolate Corners, Shadows Crouch, is due out on Amazon soon. She also was the instigator and the contributor to the anthology Singing Over the Bones, which is a collection of writing by women inspired by Wigtown characters and the area. And those of us in DuckTales have been many times to Wigtown and can vouch that there's many characters there. Chris Nicholl.
Thanks very much. Well, this poem was inspired by some images from a news report on Al Jazeera about the war in Yemen, and it's called A Child in the Ruins of War. He doesn't cry anymore, lies prone in his mother's arms until he's placed on a table, rags unwrapped. Then blue-gloved hands explore his body, rib cage, extended belly, measure his wasted limbs, make notes on paper attached to a clipboard. His eyes roll back, but not before he sees his mother, face drawn, cadaver thin, sees her look to the man who shakes his head and moves away to the next table. She rewraps him, buries her face in his dry old man neck. His lollipop head wobbles. Sensation is leaving him. The gnawing pains he felt in his joints, belly, head, left a while ago, around the time of the last bombing, when his father was killed, his brothers already buried, shrapnel embedded in their small bodies. He is the last child, such a good child, his mother's joy. Who will look after her now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. a moving poem. Our next reader is Harrison Hickman, and Harrison writes a book every time you turn around, actually. He's got 2 trilogies. The most recent one is the Lost Brotherhood trilogy, and that has recently been third in that. The Days of a Dark World has recently been released on Amazon. There are 24 brotherhoods keeping the world safe, all but one collapse, and we're the hero of the trilogy is a disgraced soldier who serves the last surviving brotherhood. So very good for our current times. We need somebody to keep order through fear. Harrison Hickman.
Yeah, well, you described the series better than I could, so I'll have to make a few notes. Really good book trailer, actually. So, so I was thinking about what I could write for this event, and for some reason I kept thinking of my other book, Set in Stone, which has been which has been one of my, I consider, quite important work to me. And I realized that the yearning to see other places, the yearning to experience something, and I'd never been to Yemen, but I kept reflecting on what it would have been like to go to Yemen, what it would have been like to see Yemen, what it would be like to walk on like streets, what it'd be like to leave and then think back on it. And so I took some time. It took me some time, but I've managed to take these visions, take these ideas into a poem called Yemen, Its Beauty, Its Intricacies. So Yemen, a nation that stretches far and sits at the heart of the world, who said, despite everything, I love Yemen. In truth, I miss it. I want to set foot upon its shores, to see a nation healed, Yemen with its mountains and old cities, hilltop towns and culture, Yemen, a nation with the unimaginable at its core. Beauty lies awake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And it does look as though it was a very beautiful country before the world got involved. Our next reader is my frequent correspondent in the early hours of the morning when everybody else is asleep. He's a prolific creator of lyrical free verse and has achieved success in poetry competitions across the UK and America, and has been published by many literary magazines in the UK, Ireland, Italy, India, Africa, USA, and Canada. He is a member of the Poetry Society, and also a Dovetails member, and has contributed to our anthologies and projects. And I'm delighted to welcome him to his first Zoom event for us. Alan Robert.
Thank you, Jane. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm honoured to participate in the Yemeni project and a proud member of Dovetails. I've had quite a bit of success recently. A lot of the credit should go to Anne Clark for putting up opportunities on the Federation of Writers Scotland website. But my inspiration for my poem tonight was the sad photograph in the Dovetails website about a wee girl lying motionless along with her parents. My poem is Yemeni plight, Yemeni plight. For our birds have flown, 3 million diaspored our nest. No one set to return, no safety here in Yemen. While our child lies motionless, rests her head on a cardboard divan, exposed to elements, exposed by mankind. Our water remains polluted. No food to fill our empty stomach. Tomorrow only a dream. Tomorrow may not come. No education for her. School flattened by munitions from educated man, from alien domains. Still, world media visits here, watches the travesty in our land, drinking and eating, bringing up our horror. But no matter what, nothing changes for existence. Few care about our squalor, few worry about our lives. Yet, we can acquiesce through sorrow, pain, purgatory. We are fodder as prey. We pray for salvation. And even in darkest days, we know there is some divine light. For our God is listening. For our God will save life. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next reader. Is from Aberdeen, and although she's lived in Glasgow for 25 years, and she returned here after 5 years' absence. I can't imagine why, but if you've been living in beautiful Aberdeenshire. Her poetry collection, Fessin Reared, was published by Seahorse last year. It's a collection of Doric and English, and Graham Fulton, the excellent poet from Paisley, described it as lyrical, incisive, true, and gently brilliant. Her most recently, she has been highlighted in the Poets Republic magazine, which helped her to relaunch her work. And she's had a highly commended in the Federation of Writers Vernal Equinox competition and runner-up in the McCash Scots Poetry competition. Leslie Benzie.
Hi. My poem's also inspired by the same photograph that Alan Roberts was, but I suppose I've taken it from a completely different angle, and it also includes the word plight in the title. It's called Yemen, Another Man-Made Plight. This bairn looks already deed. Maybe it's the unsettling angle o' her heed, too heavy for the rest of her to lift fae this alleyway strewn wi' wizened acacia seed pods. For her bed, a dusty, desiccated cardboard merges with the hue and texture o' skin, each pillowed full o' her parents' love-made flesh. They sit a few feet ahin, her father's linen futa wrapped around his trunk, shrunken to a parched reed, fit to brack in this ill wind. Her mother in blue veil, concealing but the desperation o' Areen, beyond hope for themselves. It's as if their wee daughter is an offering, that the world might remove its veil to witness truth being rendered a fatted calf by the Saudis or politicians and businessmen, allies in their vicious self-interest that justifies the arms sales. But if we don't, someone else surely will. Be complicit in the murder of 250,000 deed and bringing another 85,000 to the brink of a slow starvation, forcing even the hurt to turn and feed on itself.
Thank you very much. I think there's something very powerful about the Doric, isn't there? Our next reader is multi-talented, actually. She was a teacher and journalist. I knew Mary as a journalist, but she also taught for many years. But she now finds a lot of happiness in creative writing and has done very well in it. Her work is included in the Edwin Morgan Centenary Collection, Pandemic, and in Ungagged, and also in our Dovetails last publication, the pamphlet, The Question in a Poppy. More remarkably still, she actually created the image that you see on screen, Mary Jack.
Hi. My poem's called The Blind Boy Teacher of Yemen. Dark deep beneath twisted iron rods and black burnt concrete rubble, the little green shoots persistently propagate. One surging the strongest, although he would never see dazzling light of sun or firebursts of explosives falling on the children of war-torn Yemen, who in their clamour for a school, for education, are dodging sniper bullets, starvation and missiles, as our Western children dodge pitfalls in their Super Mario games. This blind boy, Ahmed, at only 9, is teacher, and in the shattered shell of what was a school, lights on knowledge inside his head to chant past lessons to playmates. We need walls, he says, to keep the rain from falling on us, doors and windows to keep out the wind and sun. And as he talks, the rattle and boom of gunfire and bombs pierce the acrid air. We want a blackboard and things that are not broken by war. Ahmed grins from ear to ear, and as the sounds of war continue, marks each blast with a laughing eek. But Khulud, one of his pupils, sighs. We arrive in danger and we leave in danger. We want to learn, be with our friends. Playing in the shrapnel, these indomitable innocents read UK branding on bombs.
Thank you very much, Mary. You were worrying about our children's education, but this is so much worse there, isn't it? Our next reader is actually from the Yemen, from the south of the country, and still has family there. The wonderful poet Maggie Gibson introduced her to us. So I'd like to introduce Sawsan AL-Areeqe.
Hi everyone, thank you Jane for this invitation. I'm really happy to all participants, and I'm Sawsan AL-Areeqe. I published 4 books, and I am working to my 5th book, and I will I'm gonna read poems from my 3rd book. Okay. I will read it in Arabic and in English. Okay for you?
Yes, that'd be lovely. Thank you.
أكثر من اللازم حينما أسمح لنفسي أن أكون نفسي، أتفاجأ بأن الورد على الشرفة تبسم أكثر من اللازم، والليل في واجهة المدينة تأخر أكثر من اللازم، والقمر في مائدتي اقترب أكثر من اللازم. لذلك قررت أن أسمح لنفسي أن أكون نصف نفسي حتى لا أحس الأشياء أكثر من اللازم. More than necessary. When I allow myself to be myself, I am surprised that the rose on the balcony smiles more than necessary. And nighttime in the city's face lingers more than necessary. And the moon on my dining table is too near. Then I decide to allow myself to be half myself until I do not feel these things more than is necessary.
Thank you. That's beautiful. That's lovely.
Another poem. الركن البعيد. سأخبئك في الركن البعيد من نفسي، وأقرر حينها ألا أراك، وأنت تواصل بناء الجدار بعد أن وضعت حجر الأساس لتكتشف في اللحظة ذاتها أنك أصبحت جزءاً من الجدار من دون مقاومة. ستكتشف أيضاً أنك خبأتني في الركن البعيد من نفسك، وبلا مقدمات سأنظر إلى الجهة الأخرى لأجدني جزءاً من الجدار. وللحظات فقط حين يصيبنا الندم سنرى ظلين يتعانقان في ذلك الركن البعيد من أنفسنا. In English, the far corner. I'll hide you in the far corner of myself and decide not to see you. As you continue to build the wall and lay the foundation, you discover in the moment that you yourself become a part of the wall without resistance. You will also discover me hidden in the far corner of yourself. And without warning, I will look in the other direction and find myself part of the wall. And for moments only, when regret seizes us, we will see two shadows embrace in that far corner of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was beautiful. Thank you. We are now going to have a piece of music, and this is by Adam Pellant, who is in Assynt, so he can't actually, he doesn't trust his internet connection enough to do it live. In fact, he works for the Assynt Development Trust, and has been involved with peace campaigners in the past before he'd get involved with us in Dovetails. Used to go on great adventures to Fast Lane, he says. So I'm going to play his song, Very Afraid.
Got new periscope shark fins in the water. Be afraid, be very afraid. Got more weapons of mass outdated slaughter. But what happened to overseas aid? That stitch in time could save 9 cats' lives. Check statistics and crunch the data of that strange quote that says spend on aid now to save money on bullets later. If we want change, we'd best say it loudly, 'cause they're handing out guns without question. Shiny new bombers for Saudi, is this what our councillors' pension funds invest in? It it's still happening, they're still in their wrapping. New boys' toys break the seal. Form a relationship with another dictatorship as you play around with your square meal. Westminster minister with your wisdom so sinister. From a safe distance you place your bets. All your chips on black for another attack. BAE Systems tornado jets. Hey Boris, can't you hear us? Hey Boris, we need healers. People dying in real time as you're still on safari with arms dealers. Feeling lost somewhere in the Atlantic now. You're searching through old numbers and texts, cast adrift from your neighbors and wondering who to fear next. Maybe by a lighthouse on Svalbard and be Moomin Papa all at sea. Be Vernon Dursley terrified of owls, your children under lock and key. Your outstretched arms in that trade, so afraid, so very afraid. People dying in real time, but what happened to overseas aid?
Our next poet is well known to everybody, A.C. Clarke. She's published 5 full collections and 5 pamphlets. 2 of the latter are set in and Drogheda in collaboration with Maggie Rabatsky and Sheila Templeton. Her 5th collection, A Troubling Woman, came out in 2017. She was busy that year. She was also one of the winners in the Cinnamon Press pamphlet competition with War Baby. And in 2019 won the 2nd light long poem competition for the 2nd time. She's currently working on an extensive series of poems about Gala Eloire, later Gala Dali, and the surrealist circles in which she moved. The first set of these is due to be published as a pamphlet by Tapsaltiri in 2021. A second set was shortlisted for the Cinnamon Literary Awards in 2020. And I've read the poems and just think it's a wonderful piece of work. A.C. Clarke.
Thank you, Jean. Can everybody hear me all right?
Sorry.
Right. The poem I'm going to read, I actually wrote some years ago, and it doesn't specifically refer to the Yemeni conflict. I wrote it actually in response to an image from a film about the Palestinian conflict, but it really is a universal poem. It's not specific at all. It's called Casualty. Who are you? Bundled on the sidewalk like household rubbish? I am nothing. Debris of an ordinary day. What were you? Under this sun which does not forgive, under this sky which does not weep. I was a strong hand. I was a strong hand waving, a mother's kiss, a child's running feet. Why did you stay here in the killing city after the soldiers came? My home is here, my father's father's home. I speak with the city's voice. How shall I mourn you? How remember you? Do not shed tears. Their bitter salt rusts all bright hopes. Do not sing funeral hymns. Their cadences fall heavy. Do not bring flowers. Their petals spill. Give me a shape, a human shape again. Build me in words. Name me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So powerful. The next poem is actually one of my own. I saw a child on the news, 6 years old, and remembered a book that my mother was terribly fond of, Now We Are Six. So the poem is called Now We Are Six. Now we are six. 1929, Douglas, Isle of Man. Sand castles on the beach and ice cream stung lips. My mother walks the sunlit prom, sandals slapping on hot stone. Little sister trails behind, pail in hand. Cuddles from aunts and uncles, Winnie the Pooh, and maybe cake for tea. No radio to tell them of panic on a New York street, farmers tramping country roads, begging for food they once produced themselves. 1956, Moss Heights, Glasgow. Not really a sandpit, just a patch of red earth at the back of the flats. Your garden. You dig happily, unaware no flowers will grow, and pour your sister tea from a miniature gold-rimmed cup your mum bought you for sixpence. You don't know that on the other side of the world, Britain's last hopes of empire crash into the canal they built themselves. 2021, Yemen. Sand whirls across the desert towards him, battering his eyelids and peppering his cheeks like bullets. His feet are bare and leathery as he treks solemnly after his father. His mother is dead. He looks straight into the camera. I'm exhausted by the wind and tired of the rain. I just want to go home. No escaping the eye of the storm for him. His father cannot protect him in this country ravaged by war. At 6, he wants to be a teacher and help other children and to go home. He just wants to go home. Our next reader is a stalwart of Dovetails. His work has appeared in many anthologies. He has 2 published collections of poetry, Drinking Bright Liquor, which may be remarkable, and The Last Red Telephone Box. And his 3rd book is due to come out. He won't stop writing for it, though it's going to be the largest collection of poetry ever, I think. Ray was also the last poet laureate of the Scotia Bar and is a really fine photographer as well. His work is on many pages of the Dovetails website. Ray Evans.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Good, good. This piece I wrote specifically for this event. It's called Drought. Incense caravans are welcome here. Shadavar's magical horns blowing ancient tales along the spice road. Happy Arabia hangs like a garland showered with diamond stars. Trees weep scented tears for our perfumed altar. A drought would not be welcome here. A choked, malingering lack of water would not be welcome. If I had to choose, I'd choose water. I would take everything else off the table. Full stops, commas, the idle bracket enclosing each stab of swollen lies, each guilty stab of hollow lies, rubbing innocent lives into tired rubber boats, death appearing, children drowning, those remaining starving on cardboard boxes beneath the rubble. Disease would not be welcome here. A feverish, sweated, scabby blanket, grey, fetid breath, a cloak and dagger death, shuffling ragged bones, dragging awkward clappers out into the desert. Bombs are not welcome here. Cold metal scratching slaughtered clouds, leaving us helpless, helpless. Thou sun, behold the sheltering sky. It should be blue. And what of your land? Rotten to the core. Lemmings voting for a bloated, vacuous Alibaba, imagining open sesame sandwiches, getting iron heel atrocities. It's going to get colder. Saucy's postcards mock how you love to live, shoulder to shoulder beside the seaside B&B. Knees up, Mother Earth. I think it's your round. Casino eyes hold tight to what remains here. An oily beast, drawn and quartered, all passion spent, a gaping hole rent from shoreline to pipeline, from pipeline to paycheck. Alone on the top deck, a military man, a solitary man, aims a chrome tailor-made TP5X into the very thing we love more than anything else, more than life itself, the sea.
Thank you so much. That's very powerful. Our next reader is a member of the Federation of Writers and also Dovetails, where she does lots of stuff for us down in Wigtown and Gatehouse. She's one of Wigtown's belty poets. Her poems have been published in various poetry magazines and anthologies, Indigo Dreams, The Dawn Treader, Southlight. Also, I'm very jealous of this one, she's on Poetry Scotland's website, Open Mouse, and Stanza's Poetry Map of Scotland. Recently, she's had poems accepted for Aberdeen University's Plague Project and Poetry Kit's online Plague Poems anthology. And she's produced a lovely book with photographs by her husband, From the Mountains to the Sea, which was recently published in aid of Versus Arthritis, for which I'm personally very grateful, Anne Dunford.
I started a few poems about the Yemen, and then I came across something that was a positive story, which was quite unexpected, and I thought I should include this. And Chris persuaded me to forget the other aspects and concentrate on liquid gold. In the Quran, a lone cedar tree or jujube marks the highest boundary of heaven. On earth, in the harshness of the Yemeni desert, amidst the raised streets of rubble, sweetness of cedar honey is cherished, a symbol of perseverance. Some of the purest honey comes from bees fed on flowers of the cedar, pale-coloured with a fiery, almost bitter aftertaste. Roadblocks or fighting could make it impossible to move hives to more bountiful areas. War, too, leaves a bitter aftertaste. Unmarked landmines are planted all over the country. Keepers like to move bees at night when sleepy, but nocturnal movement is viewed as suspicious, tracked closely from the air by Saudi and US drones. To the bees, farmers' pesticides present an equal threat. In attack, beekeepers need to move their hives. They pass checkpoints easily. Houthis may be rebels, but they don't like bees. Honey from the cedar tree, liquid gold. Those honeycombs hold promise, trade, hope. Thank you.
Thank you. That's such a different take on it. Thank you. Sorry. Our next reader is a writer and historian. She's a very eminent member of Dovetails, a former Carnegie scholar, who has researched and written extensively about various aspects of the history of Northern Europe, most notably how political change affects people's lives and how individuals and communities react to those changes. She's currently working on a book about a woman accused of being a witch in 17th century Scotland. Mary W. Oh, and she has also written a wonderful book beside the annex, which is about the ordinary people of Amsterdam living under occupation, and the depth of detail and thought that has gone into that book. It's marvellous. Mary W. Craig.
Thank you for that introduction, Jean, and thank you for allowing me to read this poem. It is literally the first poem I have ever written. And I'm now going to put all the blame on Jean because I wrote it, then sent it to her, and then she gave me all of this advice. So I rewrote it. So this is my little contribution to the evening, which has been amazing. And it's simply called Dust. Dust rises into the blue sky. A figure emerges, a ghost in the daylight, a child with a face from history. She walks uncertainly, each step a graceful ballet over rubble, bewilderment in every gesture. Noise overhead, now silent, ominous, threatening, a sinister pause. Shadows of lives lost, stories never to be told, laughter never to be heard. She is falling now, she cannot stop. No arms reach out to catch her. The dust enfolds her in its grey embrace. Thank you.
It's so touching. Thank you. Our last reader is another very eminent person in Dovetails because he does something none of the rest of us do, which is science. He works in the renewable energy sector. And he also, as well as writing poetry, he also composes music. I don't know if anybody's writing for our opera project, but when I was speaking to Peter about it, and he said he could actually play a piece that he's written, a poem that might go with. So that is something more than most of us can do. He's been published by Poetry Republic, the Writers' Cafe magazine, Blue Nib, and performs occasionally at events in the Glasgow area. We're very glad to have him here tonight. Peter Clive.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for that introduction, Jean. Just finding the unmute button there. Thanks. Yeah, some really stunning poems there as well, and Mary, your one there as well just felt actually quite quite well, a good fit with what I tend to read. So I'll launch into it. This is called The Innocents. Surely God must be there somewhere in the quiet midday rubble. So many children killed weren't killed for no reason. It must be because God was among them. Surely the endless daily routine of pain and fear and loss and grief and dusty pallor that suffocates and erases their childhood is because our rulers heard a rumour somewhere. Surely shrapnel pierces limbs and phosphorus burns flesh and rubble is heaped upon bodies because our rulers must have somewhere heard a rumour, have a dossier somewhere that describes in detail that God is somehow, somewhere among them, as Herod found out long ago, and are exhausting the sum of man's futile strength, calling in every airstrike, dropping every bomb in jealousy and rage against him, while we sit safe at home, bathed in TV light, entertained by the tedious percussion of foreign wars. Is God now a refugee, following weary parents on the long, low road to foreign lands to be greeted with suspicion and denigration, as happened long ago in Bethlehem and Egypt? Do we turn God away at Yarmouk and Calais? Do we spit on God and call him names? Or have we managed to kill God at last, relentlessly pursuing Herod's mission to completion, leaving us with nothing but dead children? Have we now become the angel of death, no longer following some divine plan, not passing over, but unconstrained except by earthly dictates, flexing air forces in ineffective, indiscriminate macho gestures? Surely God must be there somewhere. Please, let God be there somewhere.
Thank you very much. Our final contribution to the evening is a piece of music by Charlie Gray and Joe Peach. Joe is one of the founder members of Dovetails. And unfortunately, they can't be here tonight. Their music, they've allowed us to use their music, which I will now play for you. Thank you very much to all the poets and musicians who've given their work tonight. And thank you all for watching. I hope that you'll consider sending a donation to one of the charities that works out there. The one we've put on the screen is Mercy Relief, who are a charity working on the ground in Yemen. They're a Yemeni charity. But give the money to Save the Children, to UNICEF, to whoever is your favourite charity, to the Red Cross, because the scale of what has been happening in the Yemen is just awful. 233,000 people have died. 10 million people are in danger of starvation, and 24 million people need our help. Thank you very much.